Hi, I'm Gary Strigler. This week I said goodbye to an old friend. I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but it was my old Outfeed table, which I'd had in my shop for, it's probably been 10 years or more. The top was getting really, really rough, but the thing that I most wanted to change and improve was the fact that it was just a 2-foot wide bench, and the reason for that is because it came off of a job site back in the day when we used to take Outfeed tables to the job sites. So often I would find myself kind of struggling, needing more width. I thought, well, I might as well just rebuild the whole thing. And the purpose of an Outfeed table is it sits behind your table saw is one when you're ripping long things, you want the top of this to be maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 lower than your table saw, so you don't have to worry about anything you rip hitting it. But when I push something through the table saw, once I push it past the blade, I'm comfortable knowing that it's sitting on this table. This is also one of the main places I actually do work assembling face frames, if I'm putting trim on a cabinet, or it's a great router station also. So there is a lot of things. This is like my home base in the shop. It's also close to my miter saw. So, if I'm trimming, I can turn around and hit the miter saw. My joiner's there. This is kind of really the center of the shop. So I'd like to take a minute and just kind of go around here and explain some of the things that I think are the great features about this. Now, this is kind of a personal thing, so everyone might want to customize it their own way. Lots of people show it. Of course, for me, I try to make it as simple as I possibly can. But, the first thing when we would build a table is it's basically just 2 frames, which are kind of a ladder of 2x4s. There's a 2x4 here and a 2x4 there. Now, really important, I made sure that those 2x4s were as straight as possible, and I just nailed on this one. I think I nailed them on 32-inch centers because we don't need terrible amount of strength. So there's 2 straight 2x4s here, and then there's pieces that go in between them. Now, the outside dimension of that, this is 32. I wanted to have this lip right here because sometimes if I want to clamp something, and of course here I have no clamp right with me, but I can put a board on there and clamp it real simply, and so that lip goes around everywhere except on this end. On this end I've got even more of an overhang. I use pre-cut 2x4 studs for this, so when you put boards in between it, you end up at 92 5/8, and this MDF that I've got is actually 96 1/2, so that's why I've got the overhang there. Now, one of the things I want to mention, kind of going all over the place, but I did ease these edges with a router, and on this end I actually beveled this a little bit with a belt sander, and that's just so in case I've got some board that's really crooked, beveling that about 1/8 of an inch gives me even better chance of not having it hit this. Now, the top, and this is, I think, is important. I don't know if you can see or not, but I put pocket screws fairly often around on these rails. That's so that this top doesn't have any fasteners in the top of it, because although I try to be careful when I cut things with a track saw or anything else on top of this, every now and then I will guarantee that this top's going to have a few saw curves in it by the end of the next working year. So I don't want to hit a screw or fastener when I'm doing that. I also, on this end down here where I'm going to be going around a lot, I really put a pretty substantial radius around this so that I don't hit a corner. And while I'm standing here, also, because I do a lot of routing, I've got this Craig clamp. I don't know what they call this thing, but it's basically a port that any place that I drill, a hole, this port can drop through that hole, and now I've got a place to put a clamp anywhere I want. Of course, this just took me a while to do it, but just tightens up from behind. So yeah, I drilled 3 right here, and I wasn't super careful how I did it, but that gives me the opportunity to clamp different width boards on this edge. And why is it important to be clamping close to the edge? Because often when you're running a router, the bearing or a little bit of that bearing might be below the board, so if I laid it flat on top of here, I wouldn't be able to do that. So it's also great for holding boards while you're sanding them, all sorts of things. Now, what I found, I was a little bit disorganized, okay, maybe a lot disorganized, when I was working in the shop. And so I made a few modifications to my old Outfeed table. Like one thing, I had a little partition on the end, and so all my glue bottles are right here. So anytime I'm working in the shop, I need a glue bottle, I can come right to this end of the table and get that glue bottle. And also, which is even more important, I've had to train myself, when I get through with the glue bottle, I need to go and put it right back there. Now, I'm not going to show you, but around the other side, there's actually enough room for a gallon of glue to refill those glue bottles, and a roll of plastic wrap, which I use sometimes to, bundle a bunch of stuff together. But one of the things that I really loved, and this part of this transferred from my old Outfeed table, is drawers. Now, here's a confession. The first 2 of these drawers were actually drawers that I made a mistake on a project, so I had an extra drawer. There's actually 2 or 3 other places around my shop where I did that. But so I repurposed those drawers. They're kind of all different depths because they're from different projects. And in here, I don't know where this came from, but I'm sure you can get something like it. And you can tell sometimes I forget to close the drawer when I'm routing because there's sawdust in here, but I've got one length of pocket screws in here, my short black pocket screws, and then the screws that I use for hinges and drawer side, and then just kind of every other one there. And so that fits in here. And then I've got, some other screws, just various things. But by having this divider, you could, instead of having this metal divider, you could build that in. But at any rate, this lets me know right where these things are. This is a jig that I use to drill my back holes for my undermount drawer slides. I've got my multi-tool blades in there. So anyway, that helps me get organized. There's a pencil sharpener in there too. Okay, this was my really go-to drawer, and hope I don't create a mess here. I'm going to try and pull it out. As you can see, I don't know what job I made it for, but it was short and I didn't have the correct size of drawer slide, so I just used what I had. This drawer, when I built this, it used to not have these dividers in it, and so everything was just in a mess. So I put these dividers in here, so my utility knives are in one place. Here's the thing I use to turn on and off my dust collector, and here, and then this one long side has things like chisels. Unfortunately, one of my most used tools are these diagonal cutters, so when I have a nail come out someplace I don't want to, I can wiggle it back and forth. I got pencils and stuff in there. But at any rate, that kind of shows you where this is. And, I'm using these side mount ball bearing ones, and this is the only drawer that I put a handle on, which was left over from a job. All the rest of them have a little bit of an overhang, so I can just pull them out like this. This is actually the only new drawer I built for this job. And then I've got one divider in it, sandpaper in the back, safety glasses, a tape measure, and when I take this off every night, I store it in here, so when I come back the next morning, I can actually find it. The old saying, well, I slept on, so I can't remember anything. And I've got this rag. I don't know if it's the best thing, but it lets me wipe the sawdust off of my safety glasses. Okay, I also made dividers down here so that instead of wondering where my drill is or where my impact driver is, I've got a very specific place where they go. I've got 2 sanders here, and then there's a few other tools here that I may not get in the same place every time. I use a lot of compact routers, and so I've actually got space for 4 different ones right there. And So if you miss everything else on this, you're going to love this. I need at least 4 compact routers so that I don't have to change bits. It works so great for me. So if you get very serious about this, make sure you buy a bunch of routers so you don't have to change bits. It will actually pay for itself as you work when you're not fumbling around looking for the router or the bit. Anyway, there's where those 4 routers are. On this end, you can't see it. I've actually got probably the crudest part of this. I've simply put some screws in the end so that I always know where my hammer is. Got 1 screw in here for a speed square. And then my glue scraper. Again, these were tools I would find myself wandering around the shop wondering where they were. And now I always know. The last thing I probably want to share about this is that I also decided, and this is kind of crude, that instead of having cords coming across the floor, I wanted to mount this power strip right here. And this is actually just a power strip I had left over from Christmas lights. I may replace it with a better one later, but I toyed with the idea, since I have a crawl space shop, of crawling underneath here and running a cord from here over there someplace. I got thinking out, so I go, well, you know, if I go underneath this table over here, I've got my hose for my dust collection here. Anyway, I just used some zip ties and just chased it over there. Now, you know, I might end up redoing that, but for right now, it's working pretty well, and I can have 3 different things plugged in here. You know, again, I may want to do a better one. Anyway, I'm not saying that all of this is perfect for anybody, and this has kind of evolved with me, including the drawers that I made by mistake, but hopefully you can find some great ideas, and hopefully once we post this YouTube video, maybe some people will send us things going, hey, here's something that I did that I really, really like. But for me, this gives me the ability to do a whole bunch of stuff. Like I said, this is like home base when I'm working in my shop.